Okay, Tom Story. We are end of 2025. We're about exactly a month away from Christmas Eve. And you are a specialist. You have seen some things on the ground that most journalists don't see, even most realtors don't see. Tell us, in terms of 2025, the flavor of what's been happening on the ground with your specialty. Jump into that and maybe start first with like, what is your niche, your specialty as the guy who owns condos? Get specific there, and I want to hear what are you seeing on the ground.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, we've been one of the top downtown Toronto condo teams for the last decade, and really the last 5 years. We've had a ton of the market share. So we're very active both on the buying and selling side of downtown Toronto condos. You know, it takes one quick internet search to find out that the condo market today is not what it was previously. And I think it's also really important that people understand that most of, and at least what I've seen in my own business, like most of the real pain in the market is new construction. People that bought new construction in 22, 23, paying anywhere from $1,400 to $1,600 a square foot, which at the time, even I was very clear that I didn't think it made sense and people should be focusing on resale. And now we're in a market today that not every, but I would argue 95, if not more percent of condo sales that are happening are end user transactions. So we are in a market where the investors are starting to slowly come back, but they're going to multifamily and bigger stuff. They're not the mom and pop investors that used to be arguably 25 to 50% of the market do not exist.
Wow.
So we are now in a market today that, yeah, prices are down from the peak. Of course, they are like everything else. But you have a few different markets happening at once. You got the new construction market, which in 2025, we had 30,000 new condo units being delivered to people that bought them years ago. That's the most we've ever had in 1 year.
Wow.
Next year, we have 18,000. It's about 10-year average, a little higher. 27, we got like less than 10,000. And then after 2028, there is nothing being delivered because nothing has sold in the last 2.5 years. So you got kind of like that section of the market. Then you've got your typical, downtown resale condos. And with the resale condos, we're seeing very specific things happen based on what it is. Mm-hmm. So 2 bedrooms actually make up percentage-wise by far the most amount of listed properties and sold properties. But the small 1 beds get all the news headlines. So people think, oh, nothing is selling. It's like, well, smaller 1 bed units without parking that were sold to investors that were always traded from investor to investor. We've now found out they don't have an end user buyer.
Yeah, brutal.
Unless, price solves everything. So eventually it will get there. But they still have further to fall because the buyer for it isn't there, because your $500,000 budget that used to get you that now is getting you like a decent 1 bed, maybe with a parking spot in a building you want to be in. So because everything's kind of dropped off, they'd rather spend a little bit more to get this than go for those smaller units. Then you've got your 2 bedroom, where 2 bed plus den with a parking spot, sub 800,000 is still moving fairly quickly. Like we got 2 offers,
really?
one of our listings last week, just over 3 days on the market. Those ones are moving. So you've got kind of your overall resale market. I would argue more than half of it is investor inventory, bought by investors, for investors, made to rent out. Most end users have no interest in it. And then you've got this other section over here. And prices have dropped, but if priced correctly, like condos are selling every single day. And I'm starting to see more, at least from the buying side, is previous years' conversations. You'd have you sit down with a new buyer and they go, okay, I want to buy this and this is my budget. And ideally I want to make this much money on it and I'm going to hold it for this long. It was like, I'm buying it for myself for lifestyle, but like, yeah, it has to go up in value, right?
Right.
Now what we're finding is most buyers coming to the table now, they're like, hey, I've been renting for the last decade. I've decided now is the time to get into the market. I'm sick of paying rent. Mm-hmm. I'm going to own this for minimum 5 years. It would be nice if it went up in value, but that's not why I'm buying it. Of course, they don't want it to go down. So I've found the tone has changed a lot.
Yeah.
Because if you really look at even going back to the peak of the market, if you bought any property at a 2% interest rate, which is coming up next year if you bought in the peak of the market, you know this better than anybody. Today's rates, even if they're 4 or slightly lower, your monthly payment's kind of the same. Of course, the down payment's different. I've found the biggest difference has been going back to where mortgage rates peaked out in like October 2023 when they were over 6% for the fixed rate. Now they're under 4% and prices have come down during that time. So we've actually seen a meaningful change in the cost of owning where purchase price is down and mortgage rate is down. And now we're starting to see people come in, and October was actually pretty interesting. We had the most amount of sales for condos in any month so far in 2025. So I think sales have bottomed out.
Yeah.
I think prices for smaller units will still take some time.
Yeah, awesome. Love the high level there. And like, let's go macro a little bit. So you mentioned there's more investors looking at multifamily. We do commercial lending. We do lots of multifamily. I mean, so there's immigration and like housing supply. Let's go. Okay. Sure. A little macro of the government. We all know the narrative. They want more purpose-built rentals. There's amazing incentives if you can pull it off on the MLI Select program and such, right, as you're building multifamily construction or resale. Immigration's a hot topic. There's kind of oscillation on the policy there. I mean, just again, I want to get hyper focused again, but just if you zoom out for a sec on the macro of 2025 and which of the announcements going into 2026 do you think will actually move the needle, specifically on the 2-bedroom condos, the investor condos, resale, but pre-sale? How do you see the actual macro climate moving into 2026?
I really think the biggest thing, whether like you and me agree on this or not, is the tariff stuff still. That trade deal is nowhere near happening right now.
Yeah.
And I really do believe that just overall, like my generation doesn't necessarily get home and turn on the news after dinner, but the other generations do, the older generations.
Sure.
And that's all they're fixated on. Like, end of last year of 2024 was actually really good. And then we started this year and everything we listed in January and February was moving quick. Yeah. Like, at today's prices.
Right.
And then we had an election there. Trump went in, tariff talk heated up, all this uncertainty. And now we're fast forwarding to today. Right. So, all the government things, like I think Ontario just announced that they'll remove their part of the HST for new construction for first-time home buyers. I don't know any first-time home buyer that wants to wait 5 years to get their first property. Like that's going to help the developer. That's not going to actually help the first-time home buyer. Yeah. So I do think like on a really big level, a trade deal with the States is probably step one. But even after that, we have more than enough inventory right now. So the needle's not going to move price-wise upwards. I think we're going to trade sideways for quite some time, which isn't a bad thing. It'd be nice to have like a relatively boring market because we only work on extremes, it seems like. It's like crazy hot or tons of inventory, the most we've ever had before. So yeah, I think trade deal will be the biggest factor.
Yeah, a lot of it's buyer psychology, and yeah, like we tell a lot of buyers as well. Yeah, so the rates right now, lowest rate you'll see the 3.5 insured, to a 5-year variable. So just under, just over prime minus, prime minus 0.95, right? Prime minus. And well, just by the way, at the peak of it, so at the trough of it, when rates were at 1%, we're looking at prime minus 1.3, by the way. So it's evaporated by about 0.3, 0.4. But anyways, I mean, at that rate, I said the monthly payments are at decent levels, especially given the price decreases. I mean, you're never going to see, or very rarely going to see, as you said, low prices, low rates. And realtors have lots of time on their hands, so buyers can do full due diligence before they drop in their cash deposit. So into 2026, I'm a buyer. I'm doing the break-even analysis, right? I'm like, okay, I'm paying X rent. There's a lot of, of course, land assemblies coming for that multifamily audience. There's all the, like in Vancouver, we have the zoning, of course, along the arterials around sixplexes. You guys got something similar in Ontario, especially in Toronto. Lots of subways being built. So anyways, people I think are going to be, the people that can do the easy math on rent versus buy, that's starting to pencil out. And for the exact same reason you said, with the exact expectations you said, which I think is a great way to look at it. Yeah, 5-year hold minimum. Right?
Yeah, 10 would be ideal, but minimum 5. Yeah,
totally. So going into that, obviously, being as little biased as possible. Like you're talking to buyers, right? Yep. Like again, maybe go into the expectation of it, but also let's get more hyper look. Like, look, I'm a buyer. I'm gonna hold it for 5 years, but I still want to know: is buying in the Trinity Bellwoods area on the east side near the university. Like, what is an area that, because of the subway lines, because of the city master plan, because of name your weird little variable,
Sure.
is having the most traction, whether it's gentrification or just a pocket that is getting popular? What pockets in Toronto can people expect to have the most lift in them? And there's pros and cons, right? In terms of like, well, it's probably gonna have a lot of lift because it's still maybe not the most pristine place. Just
Right.
talk about lifestyle, talk about appreciation for the next 5 years. What are you seeing for, let's start even with next year, like a place of nice tailwind behind it, we'll call it.
I should say, like, I don't think condos are going to go up in price for another 2 or 3 years.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
regardless of area, but at least the most popular areas. So, like, probably there's 4 of them. Everybody, if you want to be like downtown, your first choice is usually King Street West.
Yeah.
That is by far the most popular because you get a mix of high-rise condos that have great views, and then the loft-style properties that everybody loves.
Right.
Plus, you've got all the restaurants, and if you're into the nightlife stuff, that's where it exists. So, a very popular area. If you go east of Yonge Street to the other side, St. Lawrence Market seems to be the second most popular area.
Nice.
Walking to the market, which is awesome. You're still close to everything. And I would just say it's a bit more of a mature version. Still good restaurants, but not the nightlife stuff. And the average age goes up a little bit when you go east of Yonge Street. Then you've got King Street East, which is like just a little bit further than St. Lawrence Market. Some great kind of pockets right there and a bit calmer than the noise you get in the King West side.
Yep.
And then still Midtown, which would be Yonge and Eglinton in Toronto. Tons of condos there now.
Yeah.
But I think the big thing is the sweet spot that we find right now is I don't like selling in most new buildings because they were only sold to investors and they're 90% rented out. I wouldn't want to own in those buildings if I'm going to live there. Not because they're rented out, it's because they're owned by investors. Because as we've learned, when markets change, people with their second or third properties are more likely to go, okay, fine, it's not doing what I wanted it to do, I'm just going to sell it. So we're finding in those buildings, there's way more for sale and they're competing with each other and actually driving the price down.
Interesting.
So I think the sweet spot is a building between 5 and 15 years old. That's what we like for most of our clients, which exists in all these areas where you know what you're getting. It wasn't just sold to investors. Every building, I mean, even 50-50 is pretty good these days because of what we've gone through.
Of tenant to
owners.
Yeah.
To owner occupiers.
Yeah.
The maintenance fees are not a mystery. You've got some history on what they've actually done. There's some older buildings that have way better maintenance per square foot than newer ones that include more in the fee. So everyone gets fixated on like, what's the total? But a really well-managed older building could actually look like a better option to some people if you can get over the fact that the hallways aren't like as modern as the other things.
Sure.
But yeah, that's what we're focusing in on. And then going back to the buy versus rent, we've run these numbers and it is still cheaper to rent right now, even if you have a 15% down payment. If you run the numbers on taxes, maintenance fees, mortgage, overall cost, it's cheaper to rent by like $500 in most scenarios. If you then break it down further and go, okay, let's look at the mortgage payment. How much is going to the initial loan?
Exactly.
How much is going to interest? So the lost cost is, interest, maintenance fees, taxes. Either way, you're paying insurance on whether it's renter's insurance or owner's insurance. So yeah, it's actually on paper, if you have a down payment, which is obviously a big factor, the lost cost is less if you own because a certain percentage, like at a 3.5% interest rate from a brand new mortgage, is it 50-50 these days on interest versus principal or where's it at?
Usually 2/3, right? So at the beginning, so call it 2,000, then 1,000 principal. So yeah, so when you take out the principal, which is forced savings,
right,
that's the lost cause as you coined it, which I was just going to say, it's the exact same thing.
And so whenever I brought this up before, then, the typical pushback is like, well, Tom, opportunity cost. I could be renting and investing. I'm like, I agree with you.
Sure.
But opportunity cost sounds a lot like you're a lot smarter in hindsight. Like, yeah, you could have done that. Yeah. Would you have invested the difference? That's on a personal level.
Totally.
So yeah, but I will say the gap between these two numbers, even if we take out everything we just talked about and just what it cost me per month, is way closer now than it used to be.
Yeah, totally.
When interest rates were at 6%, the rental prices were going crazy. Rental prices have actually come down, and what's interesting is this year in the city of Toronto, we're going to have the lowest sales volume we've had since like 2003 transactions taking place. But we've had more leases than we've ever had before in the history of the market. So total transactions were actually the same as 2021, just they've completely shifted
Proportion.
from sales to leases to leases to sales. And that's like the need for housing hasn't changed. Just
Totally.
the confidence level on how people are making those decisions has obviously changed.
Yeah, it's important to highlight. So I think there's a lot to be optimistic about then from that standpoint in terms of it oscillates. And again, like Toronto, like lots of agents can actually monetize on leases. It's like a non-thing in BC and many other provinces, right? So I think like, you know, I do think the industry is bound for a rebound. And I guess like starting to kind of like wrap up on this in terms of like, yeah, like again, advice for buyers going to 2026 with very, I think, tapered expectations. You know, what's something that you think is overhyped in terms of overhyped or there's just fear mongering going on? Like, I mean, this is like, what's your hot take on people are seeing in the headlines what some people are overhyping or underhyping? Like, let's see some extremes here, just so people have a bit more data points to hang out during the holidays and do some deep thinking going into 2026 spring.
I think the biggest overhyping, because it's been covered the most, is how there is no new condo selling right now. Like, and that's what gets reported on. Like, you know, a report came out last month, 52 new condos sold in the city of Toronto, and the GTA has a population of 8 million people, right? So it's like, people are like, holy crap, the condo market sucks. It's like, no. That has nothing to do. There was thousands of sales on the resale market. Yeah. That is just new construction. And by the way, if you're cheering this on, you're going to be regretting in 5 years when nothing is built and prices accelerate again. Like, you need to have some. So I think the biggest thing that's being hyped up is how no sales are happening on the new construction, how somehow this is a good thing. This is gonna be a bad thing. It's not right away. Like, we have more than enough inventory for the next 5 years. I truly believe that. 2030 and beyond, we used to only build condos. We never built new houses. We don't have the land here. You guys don't either, obviously, other than, you know, one person building a new house. Yeah. Now we're not even building condos. The only thing being built is purpose-built rentals. And in your market, it's probably that plus the multiplexes because of what's been going on with that, right? So I think that's the biggest thing for the buyers getting into the market into next year. I still don't think you have to be in a massive rush, because I can't see a situation where prices rise in any meaningful way in the next 12 months. I really can't. Yeah. But the good units are still selling. They're selling. So focus in on the wow factor. In crappy markets, what sells? Well, really good floor plans, great views. Maybe it's a loft style. Maybe it's the fact that you're a smaller unit, but you have a parking spot. Like, focus in on those things, because then in good markets, it's obviously going to sell. So focus on that. And then the one piece of advice we give all of our buyers, and it sounds kind of funny when I say it, but it's like, it helps them make a decision. You know, when you buy a property, you never want to wake up the next morning and be like, holy shit, what did I just do? Like, you don't want to have that regret. So, you know, once we educate them, when we go and start viewing properties, we'll say to them, I want you to rank this condo on a scale of 1 to 10, but you can't say 7. And they're like, why can't I say 7? I'm like, a 7 is an average answer. I don't want you to feel average about this purchase. So what it forces them to do is, if it's a 6 or below, move on. Just move on. Yeah. If it's at least an 8, what can we do to make it a 9? Perfect 10s exist, but even in slow markets, usually they sell pretty quick, or there might be competition. So that formula and way of thinking we've found has been very beneficial to people making decisions. Because listen, I'm a numbers guy. I can run all the numbers forever and give you all the data points. The end of the day, buying anything, emotions win, no matter what, always. So just something to keep in mind.
No, I love that. And this is sort of, I think, actually, you've sparked a question around, let's call it this midpoint of emotions and numbers. So like, I'm an investor. I think the AI bubble is going to pop at any moment, and it's the last few weeks hasn't been good, but, you know, I mean, it was bound to slow down for a sec. I'm thinking about the buying taste of Gen Zs. I'm thinking about, what do they care about? And we all know, at least the data says, experiences, don't like to own, and they're lonely as hell. Not to mention, you know, I think that the stat is 20% of Canada works from home. So I've been doing a lot of research on like, well, how can real estate evolve to be a bit more experiential and more than a roof over your head, given that it's a pretty bad deal now, given all we've talked about in terms of like just where it sits. So for the investor thinking about buying something, whether it's, obviously a multifamily and or a condo that has the right amenities, the right program, and the right, community around it, like let's go past 2030.
Sure.
And especially if you get involved in the development, or maybe you're doing it now, like what is the modern day condo that can deliver, again, especially to Gen Zs, an experience, more health, more community, more custom tailored to work from there and not be jammed in your den? Like how does this product have to evolve to help the end user, but also investors got to be the ones putting in the dough now? So I mean, bigger question, kind of different. Let's get a little creative here.
It's a really difficult answer because at least how it works here in Toronto, they can't put a shovel in the ground until they sell out 70% of the building.
Yep.
You're not getting construction financing.
Yeah.
So who are the people that are willing to buy those units to get you to 70%? And mostly it's investors, right? So they fall into this, like, I don't blame the developers for building small units. If that's what people were buying, that's your market, service your market, right? But it's this tough thing where it's like, now we're going to see this shift because no one wants to buy these units because the investors don't exist, or they're around, but they're not participating. How do you get the end users to buy something? Well, you got to give them something that they actually want. And, it could be the amenities, the location, the builder, all those type of things, but it's probably the size. Mm-hmm. But then for developers, like, well, if we build it this big, then we have to charge this much or we can't launch the thing. So I really still believe like the future, to me, I have this bad feeling we're just going to be in deja vu. And in 5-10 years, we're going to look back and be like, it happened again, unless the system changes. But because you said past 2030, here's what I will say to like anyone that's on the fence about buying a property, their first property. Even if you buy your first property as an investment, which you'll tell them you have to put 20% down on that instead of the minimum down payments. I think in your 20s and 30s and 40s, and you could even argue 50s, there is nothing wrong with renting real estate. Nothing wrong.
Yeah.
Where I see all the really sad stories happen is when you see in the news that the 75-year-old that's been renting for their entire life gets given notice and they were in rent control and now they have nowhere to go. And it's like this. So personally, I think for myself, and this doesn't mean you can't invest in other areas as well, you should own real estate and pay off the mortgage as soon as possible so that you don't have a cost of living when you're retired. I get there's taxes and utilities and things like that, but if you rent that entire time, if you're great in the stock market, fine. But I personally, for myself, like I don't want to have a mortgage by the time I'm 45. Like I'm really working hard to get everything paid off. I want to own what I own and know it's going to be there and no one can tell me to leave, because inflation will do its thing and everything will become more expensive. So every other argument, I could go back and forth on renting versus buying. Like there's no right or wrong.
Yeah.
Cost of living, having no real big cost of living when you're retired is like kind of a beautiful thought.
Totally.
No matter how cheap your rent is right now.
Yeah. I think that's a great way to end it off, man. No, I appreciate that. I mean, we covered a lot. I think you gave a really good micro on this year on the proportion of, buying to leasing, which means the total addressable market is still similar. People are still bullish on Toronto. We're having a bit of a rebound. You said the next 12 months is going to probably be around the same. So just circumstantially in your life, if the math makes sense for you rent-wise, and we gave you a couple ways to do the math on that, even just either an absolute cost or just like, a lost cost, as you said. I think that's great, simple math for people to think about. And then, real estate should always be, at least a 5-year hold, maybe 10. And therefore, we didn't cover this, but you should ideally try to find a place you're not going to outgrow. So if you're like in your 20s, 30s, single, the day you get a dog, cat, and a girlfriend, boom, you might have outgrown it. And think about the exit plan too, right?
I tell people all the time, I'm like, I'm not trying to make you spend more money now, but I'd rather you get a bigger place now so you don't have to call me in 3 years and pay transaction costs. Exactly. That you can live here for the next 10 years, not the next 3 to 5. It's actually going to cost you less in the long term.
Yeah. It's this whole exercise of home buying, at the very least, it makes you extremely cognizant of your finances, and like people are pretty bad at predicting the future. People are very like in the present, and that's great. Presence is good. I love being mindful, but this is a good exercise to be like, okay, where could things go? And it just makes you do some forecasting. So I think it's a level up experience. So with that, Tom, man, you were really awesome with the 2025, and as you said, 2026, a bit more of the same. But I think people who have time to get the reps in, look at places, start doing calculations in terms of where they're at. Any last comments or thoughts in terms of, again, that niche level expertise from you and your team, final advice for buyers going into 2026?
Yeah, I really do believe that condo sales have bottomed out in the resale market. And there will be an opportunity here where prices keep dropping a little bit and interest rates are dropping or staying the same, that there is a true difference in cost of owning it. How long does it last where eventually things pick up? No one can tell you for sure. But if you've got a 5 to 10 year timeline and you know what you want and you decided you are going to buy, I think 2026 for most people looking back will probably be pretty happy with it. The biggest decreases have happened.
Yep.
They have. It's very clear. It's very clear to me. And some stuff's moving and some stuff's not. Buy something good that in a slow market sells and you'll have no issue selling in a hot market.
Yeah, no, you've got lots of time to swing the bat. And I think it's just a great exercise to get out there and even start to understand like what trade-offs are you willing to make? And you've got lots of time for DD, and not like you want to waste sellers' time. But again, good time to get the practice in. So with that, Tom, super appreciate the specialist purview on the data with 25 and 2026. And we'll definitely do a refresh on this as the year evolves.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
You bet.